Hello. That's a very hard act to follow, but I'm going to try my best. My name is Dr. Fredrik deBoer. I'm here to talk to you about my book, which is called The Cult of Smart. Ideas festivals are places of great optimism, but I want to talk to you today about failure. I want to talk to you about failure in education and why I think, to some degree, it's inevitable. Okay, so in the United States, but also in many other developed countries in the world, we've had these two phenomenon that are related. One is that we have had great income inequality growth. So the distance between people on the income ladder has been growing and growing and growing as the people in the top 20% now make vastly more than the people in the bottom 20% compared to 50 years ago. We also have had a really robust college wage premium, meaning that people who get a college degree in the United States have for the past 50 years enjoyed a strong income premium. So they make more money than their peers who only have high school diplomas. So far, so good, I guess. This is something that we might want to look at those two ideas and say to ourselves, well, if there's increasing inequality and there's an increasing college wage premium, are they related in some way? And in a certain sense, they have to be, right? College is a tool for creating economic inequality. This is a very counterintuitive idea, but it is an idea that I think is true. In other words, if I and three other people don't have a college degree, we have a certain level of equality within us, and our bargaining power, our ability to make money on the job market is the same. But if I go to college and the other three do not, and I have a college wage premium, so I make more money, we are exacerbating inequality. So in the United States, we love to call education the great equalizer, but in fact, it's almost exactly the opposite. And this is really important because still today, 2/3 of Americans do not have a college degree. Okay, so you have now people with only high school diplomas who increasingly cannot make ends meet with only the high school diploma. In the United States, we used to have this idea of the factory on the edge of town job. This was a job in manufacturing where a able-bodied worker could go to the factory without a college degree. They could get a good job. That job paid enough to raise a family, own a home, own a car, etc. That lifestyle collapsed within the past 50 years for two major reasons. One is offshoring. So those factories that were at the edge of town are now in places like China. But also automation, so that we got more efficient machines that could do more and more of the work that humans used to do, costing them their jobs. So now we're in a situation where we know that people with college degrees are doing pretty good. We know people without them are not doing so good. What did the American political system decide? It said, we're going to solve this problem by sending everyone to college. That has been the mantra of the American policy apparatus for decades now. Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, all have said again and again during their presidencies that the education is the key to fixing this problem of people who are living lives that they're not able to afford. There's two problems with this, with the idea of everybody going to college. Number one, a relative advantage ceases to be an advantage if everyone has it. Again, think about me and my four friends, right? I have the college degree, they don't. So I can bargain for more money in the labor market. But if all of a sudden all four of us have that degree, we're competing against each other. right? We have an asset that is no longer rare. The college degree has been valuable in large measure precisely because it is unusual to have one, even in modern day America. That's reason number one why it's not going to work. If everyone had a college degree, we'd all just be competing against each other. Here's reason number two. Not everyone is equipped to succeed in college. This is a very, very unpopular idea in the academy, in politics, in the policy world, but we have ample evidence to show that this is true. A really basic observation about education, which I will return to, I'm sure, is that whenever we have looked at education at any level, at any age, we always find a distribution of ability. There are always those who excel and always those who struggle. That is true of any educational activity you can imagine, and it appears to be a fact of life. Sorry. Students have differing levels of baseline ability. Students come to education with very different levels of intrinsic ability, or let's just say prerequisite ability. We can observe that there are inequalities in educational outcomes in preschool. So literally before kindergarten, we are already identifying in the research that some students are ahead of others. And what we also see in the research is that these tiers where people are lined up tend to be what we might call sticky. In other words, kids who start near the bottom tend to finish near the bottom. Kids who struggle in elementary school, struggle in middle school, and struggle in high school. Are there exceptions? Of course, there's plenty of exceptions, but from the policy level, that's what we see. To give you one example of how this plays out, third grade reading group, so 8-year-olds, the reading group that they are in third grade is a strong predictor of whether they will attend college, okay? So we can look at kids at a very early age, and we can have a really good idea about how well they're likely to do. I say in the slide, I think this is a fake controversial statement. I don't think it's actually controversial to say that many people acknowledge that different students play out very differently within their educational careers, and that this tends to be a perpetuating phenomenon. Whether we like it or not, different students end up with different levels of ability. Now, there's lots of different reasons why people ascribe to this. Certainly, environment is a big one. Poverty plays a strong role. Parenting plays a certain role. There are also people who argue that there is a genetic component. So the field of genetic behaviorism has been putting together for decades evidence showing that there is, in fact, a genetic link to how well students perform in school, from parent to child. Not a question of race, or not a question of boys versus girls, but rather of individuals. Now, I'm not a genetic scientist, so I can't tell you whether or not that is true, and it's certainly very controversial. There are very well-esteemed academics on both sides of that debate. But one way or the other, we have to accept the fact that the fantasy of all students performing at an excellent rate in school is something that is totally outside of our lived experience. But again, the policy apparatus, the politicians only see more better schooling as the only way forward. So if we want to see a really good example of a bad outcome from this kind of thinking, was No Child Left Behind. It was a law passed in 2002 with both Democrat and Republican support. It said that we needed to see improvements in test scores every year without exception, and we needed to have literal 100% student compliance with standards within the next 12 years. So literally every student had to be meeting standards by that time. The law was an absolute disaster. No one was meeting the standards because they were impossible. It was putting incredible pressure on schools and school districts that they had no way to effectively address. So in 2014, President Obama and congressional Republicans came together to replace it. And if you remember that period, Obama and Republicans coming together on anything had to be a real slam dunk in terms of the necessity. So the stakes of the academic race are now so high, the competition is so fierce that there's a culture of academic obsession in the United States, and I call this the cult of smart. And it's the idea that your value as a human being is based entirely upon how well you do in school. We have this tendency when we look at our children to say, how are they doing as a human being, and to immediately point to their report card, which tells us nothing about if they're compassionate, if they're thoughtful, if they're creative, if they're curious, if they're friendly. All of these are dimensions of human beings that matter, and yet our system is so obsessed with the economic benefit of getting an education that we have narrowed ourselves down to this tiny little view of what it means to be a valuable human being. Okay. What can we do about the scenario that we're in where the policy apparatus says we have to force everyone into college? It's not going to work. We have students who, for whatever reason, some of them struggle. What are we going to do? The first thing we should do is loosen standards. Again, this is a very unpopular idea. But let me tell you a little story. In 2016, a political scientist named Andrew Hacker put out a book called The Math Myth. In The Math Myth, he demonstrated that math requirements were holding back untold numbers of students, that they were disrupting their academic lives, that they were causing them to stay back in school, and that many of them then dropped out of school, okay? And he quoted some really remarkable statistics. For example, in the year that he referred to, in Arizona, 64% of high school students could not pass the requirement on the state mathematics test. 64%. But we also have things that go the other way. I live in New York. In New York, we have the Regents exams. The Regents have solved this problem in a kind of creative way. To pass the math section of the Regents exam, you only have to get 31% of the questions correct. And even still, at that cutoff point, only 72% of the students passed. So more than a quarter of the students could not get 31% of the questions correct. So we can rewrite standards to be more humane by making them refer to more and different things so that rather than simply looking at a test score, we look at other indicators that demonstrate student growth. And there's all kinds of great research in this area about other ways to value students than a test score. And there's better ways than forcing everyone into the same path. Okay, lowering the stakes. So I'm a socialist. The game is rigged, right? The game is rigged in the current system for people who have college degrees. Well, if the game is rigged, one of the ways that you can fix that is you can lower the stakes of the game, right? If we instituted a Scandinavian-style social democracy, if we provided for people with things like universal health care, a child allowance, paternity and maternity leave, then it would not be so devastating to you to be someone who's a loser in the academic game. It would not hurt as much. Okay, so labor unions have the opposite situation that college degree holders have when it comes to increasing the density and seeing the wage premium. Again, like I said, if everyone gets a college degree, it's no longer rare, so there is no longer an economic benefit. Labor unions operate the opposite. The higher labor density goes, the better wages grow because they work together and bargain their labor power in mass, and they use that to raise wages. So that's an alternate option that we could have pursued instead of college for all. But unfortunately, a lot of the big businesses didn't like it, so that's not where we went. And we need to create a new culture. So if you want to see the cult of smart in action, read about immigration in the United States. Immigration is an immensely controversial topic in the United States. But one thing that both sides tend to agree on is they want to have more skilled worker visas. And they say things like, we need the most brilliant minds in our country. We can't afford to keep out the scientists and these academics. That we need to pursue only the smartest people. That's a direct statement of value that says whether or not you're kind, friendly, creative, curious means nothing to us. What matters to us is, can you do well on a test? Are you smart? And this is what I'm trying to dismantle, this culture that says only education and intelligence matter. Okay. So that was a lot of big ideas in a very small period of time. But my book is available in the bookstore out in the lobby. I'll leave you with this. We model for our young people what we value. We model for them what matters. We model for them what earns our love, right? I would challenge those of you with children to think about the ways in which you might contribute to the cult of smart, and to encourage you to always see your children in many, many, many other ways than just how well they're doing at school. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.